In this video, we're going to learn how to use the MMS tactically on the OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior. The footage used in this video is pre-release software and is intended for promotion and training purposes. Its visual and audio qualities may not represent the final product. Alright guys, welcome aboard the OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior from Polychop. We're going to talk about how to tactically employ the aircraft with regards to how to use the MMS. Now if you haven't watched the video that I posted about MMS operations, I suggest that you go do that. We're going to cover things here that were already talked about there, so you have some understanding, just so that you're caught up. But what we're going to do is head out and kind of show how we can use the MMS tactically, both with a multi-crew and single crew environment. Just a reminder, we can pull up the MMS imagery here in the right seat by either pressing the MMS switch there, or we can use it by clicking up on the display switch. Jumping over into the left seat, one thing that is important to just understand, and again, go back to the other video and just make sure that you have an understanding of how to use pre-point. So we're going to head out to a target area where we've got some targets set up, and we can just use that pre-point to help us get into the right area. All right, so I have 3 whiskey as my target area, so I'm going to put 3 whiskey, enter. Now that's in my buffer, so I can use that to at least get the sight into the right area. And we're going to talk about how to use the MMS when we have an idea of where the target is and when we just see something, a target of opportunity. The thing to remember is this little box up here. It's going to give us the azimuth off of the aircraft that the MMS is looking, so 15 degrees to the right of our current heading. And then it's also going to give us the elevation above and below. You can see here we've got 29, so roughly 30 degrees of downward elevation. That's something to remember when we get into orbits, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But as the right seater, if you get too close, it makes it very difficult for the left seater to actually see what he's looking at. He may be at an angle where you can't actually get the MMS down to look at something. It's very difficult in an urban environment. We can talk a little bit about that. It's also important to keep the MMS locked forward when you're not using it. It's very simple to do from the left seat, but you just want to have that MMS locked forward. In real life, look, the thing's going to bounce around and kind of bang into itself if you're just letting it flop around, so we always kept it forward. Obviously, that's not going to be a problem in DCS, but it does make your life a little bit easier for some of the techniques that we're going to talk about soon. Another thing to keep in mind is how far can the MMS move. So we're going to swing it all the way around. Hey, how you doing, buddy? I'm trying to make a video here. We're going to swing it all the way around to the edge of where it can hold. So you can see 190 degrees to the right from center line. So it's actually looking back into the left, okay? I'm going to bring it back forward. So it can go 190 degrees right or left from center line. That's very important to understand, that it does not go in a complete 360, and that's going to play into how we actually fly the aircraft. Now, look, I know some of you are asking, well, why can't it go 360 degrees? I don't understand. Look, this aircraft is old, okay? I don't know. We're not going to go back in time 40 years and try to explain to Bell why it's important that it spins around 360 degrees so that we can have fun with it in a video game. Just accept it for what it is. It doesn't spin around 360 degrees. I don't know why. It doesn't really matter. If we spin it to the left, it's going to go 190, and then we're going to have to bring it back around to the front. But we've got some strategies that we can prevent that from being a real issue. All right, so we're going to head on out to the target area, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how to employ the MMS. Now let's say that we're heading on to our objective. Got the mast mounted sight fixed forward. And let's say that I, as the pilot, see something off to the right. It's very difficult, and this is probably one of the hardest things for the left seater. In real life, it was one of the most difficult things to deal with, was trying to figure out where am I looking and where is my sight looking. You spend a lot of time doing this number, looking at the screen, looking up, looking at the screen, looking up, trying to figure out, is what I'm looking at matching? So there's a couple techniques. The easiest, of course, is with the MMS fixed forward, is we can just put the aircraft lined up on whatever it is we're looking at. So if we were looking at this last clump of trees here, the pilot could just bring the aircraft around until he gets the sight roughly in the area. And I'm just kind of eyeballing over to the left, seeing the sight and saying, okay, that's the area. Now the guy can set the MMS to manual and maneuver as required, and then the aircraft can continue to do what it's doing. I highly recommend that you get very good at using the target locate switch and using the laser and then marking that point, because as you're maneuvering, particularly if you start taking fire, it's going to be very difficult to keep the sight on that location. Additionally, you can use the area track method. Another thing, of course, we can do is use that box. So as I'm looking at the 1 o'clock, that's roughly 30 degrees. I look at the 2 o'clock, that's roughly 60 degrees. And 3 o'clock is 90 degrees. So if I see something at 1 o'clock, I should know that as long as I get the sight over approximately 30 degrees, I should be looking in the right area. So I see that road and I see that tree line. There's that road and that tree line. And once again, I can either point track, area track, whatever I need to do to keep the sight in that area. Believe me, I know how frustrating it is to try to get the sight on something, and particularly something that's up close. And a lot of times you might need to pull back away from the target area in order to find something, because the sight only moves so fast. You've only got so much fidelity. Make sure you have the sight to its minimum zoom, okay? Bring it all the way out to this widest field of view. That's going to give you the most visibility. But again, it is such a small screen, so you're going to have to do a lot of comparison, looking out the window, and trying to find something distinctive to make sure that you're looking in the right spot. All right, so like I said, using the pre-point is going to help us. It's going to do a lot of work for us. So right now I know that my target area is roughly at 3 whiskey. I've got that plugged in my pre-point buffer. We're selected to pre-point. So I'm going to select that pre-point. And now my sight is at least looking in the right direction. And I can zoom in, and then I can start looking around, trying to figure out what I'm specifically looking for. Make sure you get that LMC turned on. It's going to help you over time. Now you might be wondering, well, why am I flying so high? Look, it's totally situational dependent. What is the threat? What is the environment? What, you know, don't just default to, well, I have to fly low or I have to fly high. You fly based on the conditions and the situation that you're in. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to keep that sight on the target if we want to keep moving. Now, of course, I could come to a hover somewhere. I could hide behind that hill and peek up over. The thing about it is, hovering uses up a lot of fuel, and it makes it harder for you to avoid fire if it starts coming in. Right now, I'm pulling 63% torque, and I'm burning 260 pounds per hour. If I were to bring this to a hover, we'd be pulling in a lot more torque, and we'd be using a lot more fuel, which means we're not going to be able to stay on station nearly as long. The problem, of course, now is that I'm moving, and if I can't keep flying towards the target, and I can't fly away from the target, because it's just going to make things very difficult with the sight. So what we're going to do is do something called eights. And I'll try and pull this up in a different image to help visualize what we're going to do. But essentially, think about, we're going to fly a figure 8 pattern that's perpendicular to this target. So our target is that town. So we're going to put that town off our right side, about 90 degrees. And then we're going to continue. And there's no hard and fast numbers. Let's go about 120, 130 degrees. All right, so I'm going to fly outbound. We can see that the MMS is still looking at that suspicious building there that we want to take a look at, or whatever, the area that we're looking at. I'm going to fly outbound for a little bit. Then I'm going to start a turn back towards the target. I'll swing it back around. And this is all the pilot's work. The left seater, he's down in the sights. He's looking at targets. He's looking for stuff. He's searching. And I'm just going to do a big circle. And I'm going to come back around essentially to where we started. It doesn't, look, it's conceptually an 8. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to be drawing, you know, donuts in the sky or anything like that. I think you're getting the concept here is that we're constantly putting the aircraft in a position where the MMS can still see where it's going. This is how we avoid that issue of the sight not being able to turn 360 degrees. So now I'm turning outbound. I got 130 degrees off on the left side now. And I'm keeping my distance from the target. So waypoint 3, we're at 3 kilometers from waypoint 3. We can, you know, move this 8 around a little bit. We can make it larger, make it smaller. We can push it further away. We can move it closer up, just whatever you need to do. So I'm going to get about 3.5 Ks or something like that. And then we'll start turning back around towards the target. As a Kiowa guy, you're going to spend a lot of time, at least in a high intensity type situation, doing this because you don't want to overfly target areas. You don't want to go too deep, but you still want to look forward. So picture that we've got friendly forces down here below us. We're kind of working on the front lines, and we're just looking past them. We could hover. Again, it's just one of those things that, can we afford the station time? So I'm just going to continue around. I'm at 3Ks now. I could continue closer in if I needed to. And again, I can just make adjustments to flying this figure 8 so that the sight ends up where I want. If he needs me to adjust and look at a different angle on this building, well, I could just continue forward up that way and then sort of reposition my 8s. Okay, but right now I'm basically running east-west 8s oriented north, looking north. Alright, so figure 8s are something good in a high intensity conflict. A low intensity conflict, a more coin environment, you might be doing a little bit more orbits, which makes just a lot of sense. Everyone understands the concept of an orbit. We're going to orbit this town, or we're going to orbit parts of this town, just kind of depends on the situation. Don't forget that look down angle of 30 degrees for the MMS, so we don't want to get too close to the area that we're looking at, because it's going to make it very difficult for the left seater to figure out what's going on and to keep the sight focused. Now, different schools of thought about which side you should do orbits on. I was always a fan of putting whatever it was out my right door, particularly if I was the wingman. So let's say that my lead aircraft was down below me doing an orbit. If he was doing left-hand orbits, I would definitely be doing right-hand orbits, because the idea here is that if I can keep my eye on him, and if he gets into trouble, I can quickly turn in and do what needs to be done. But also it allows me to kind of look around at the area, and the left seater is just focused solely on the screen. Now, it's important as the right seater to have an understanding of what we're looking at. I know that the area in question is that red mosque right there, so we're just going to continue around. The left seater is going to be doing what he's doing, and I'm just making adjustments to my flight pattern to make sure that his MMS is in the best position possible. I can see right now that we're at 82 degrees off to the right side, and we're at 15, 16 degrees down angle. So I'm getting fairly close to this guy, and I can see this building right here. So in this case, I might just extend a little bit further out. And you should always be concentrating on what you're doing with the aircraft, but you should also always be looking over at what's going on that guy's screen and making adjustments to make his life a little bit easier. And if you're in the left seat, you need to be communicating to the pilot of what you need him to do. So in this case, if I need him to extend out a little bit further to the south, so I could try to get a different angle, or, you know, whatever adjustments I need, higher, lower, slower, faster. So guys, as you can see, using the MMS is pretty straightforward. You just have to understand its limitations and then work around them. I've basically showed you all the tricks that you need to know to get the MMS working for you in a functional way. You just have to adjust things in the scenario that you're in and find what works best for you at the time. Thanks as always to Patreon and YouTube members for supporting the channel. Thanks again to Polychop for giving me access so I can make these videos for you guys. I hope you're enjoying it. I'm having a great time with Kiowa, having a lot of fun, kind of reliving some old memories, and I hope you guys are having fun making some new ones. We will talk to you later. Take it easy.